Go away. Facing Kate, who was standing in front of him, Jason just said 2 words, coldly. For some reason, facing the guy in front of him who he met for the first time after time travel, Jason felt full of emotion in his heart. Disgusted. What did you say? Kate, who didn't expect Jason to say that, was slightly stunned, and then her face changed. You kid, don't you want to live anymore? Humph, don't think that it's a big deal if you advance this time, you're just lucky. I think you should just drop out of school obediently. You won't be so lucky next time, you loser. Kate had a mocking look on her face, looking at Jason in front of her with disdain. Jason raised his head and glanced at Kate in front of him with cold eyes. How long has it been? Jason himself had forgotten how long it had been. It seemed that since he became a 6th-level elixir master at the age of 18 in his previous life, no one had dared to speak to him so arrogantly. Under normal circumstances, Jason, who had experienced so much in his previous life, would never take Kate's provocation to heart at this moment. But for some reason, perhaps because of the influence of the original owner of this body, a surge of anger came from Jason. Quietly rising in my heart. Jason took a slight step forward, and suddenly leaned against Kate's strong body standing in front of him. The 6th-level spiritual power in his body started to operate at high speed in an instant, and a huge force suddenly burst out from Jason's body, knocking him down. Kate pushed hard and then walked towards the door of the Sith Academy of Spiritual Power as if nothing had happened. In his previous life, not even a 9th-level spiritual master dared to stand in front of him, but now, even an 8th-level spiritual master who had not even reached the 1st-level spiritual disciple dared to stand in front of him. He yelled at himself. In this world where the jungle prevails, Jason once again understood what it meant to be respected by strength. Under Jason's powerful impact, Kate's body took several steps back on the granite-paved road. At this moment, seeing what seemed to be a conflict happening here, the two of them were already surrounded by people. Many students, many who knew Jason, were pointing and pointing, while a few who obviously knew some inside information were constantly promoting the relationship between the 3 of them. Under the crowd's watch, Kate, who was pushed out by Jason, felt extremely embarrassed. Her face suddenly turned extremely ugly. She shouted angrily and rushed towards Jason. Forget it, Kate, no more. Lucy on the side hurriedly grabbed Kate's arm, looking at Kate with a hint of pleading in her eyes, even though she had left Jason and had nothing to do with him anymore. But I don't want any more conflicts between Kate and Jason. Get out of my way, don't stop me. Amidst the whispers of the people around her, Kate, who was filled with anger, threw Lucy's hands away and rushed towards Jason angrily. What do you want to do? Do you want to be expelled from the academy? At this moment, a majestic voice suddenly came from outside the venue. The huge voice carried a shocking sound wave, which shocked Kate, who was rushing towards Jason, also shocked everyone present. Teacher Fengyi, hearing the voice, the crowd of onlookers immediately made way for a path, and a middle-aged man walked out of the crowd with a gloomy face. He was the one who taught Jason spirituality at the Sith Spiritual Power Academy. Fengyi, a 3rd-level senior spiritual master who practiced hard. Teacher Fengyi. Seeing Fengyi, Jason, who had been walking forward without a trace, stopped. For Teacher Fengyi, who taught him spiritual training, Jason still had a trace of respect in his heart. What? You want to fight in public? You have nothing to do in the academy. Do you want to be expelled from the academy? Instructor Fengyi came between the two of them, his eyes fell on Kate, and he said coldly. Although Stern Continent is a world where the strong are respected, in order to improve the students' practical experience, the academy often organizes some competitions, but students are strictly prohibited from fighting in private in the academy, and violators will be expelled from the academy. Kate glanced at Fengyi with some awe. No matter how arrogant he was still a little afraid of the teachers in the academy. Then she snorted at Jason in front of her and sneered, "You can only be a coward. Now, if you are a man, have a fair competition with me." A fair competition? Looking at Kate with a provocative face, Jason suddenly smiled. You are 19 this year, but I am only 10. 7. It has been more than half a year since you reached the 8th level of spiritual power, and I just advanced to the 6th level of spiritual power yesterday. If you regard death as a fair competition, then I really have nothing to say. Are you so thick-skinned that you won't blush? Haha. After hearing Jason's words, the students who were watching all laughed out loud, suddenly feeling that this person who was called the number one loser in the academy, Jason, was really a bit amused, and Feng Yi, who was standing between the two and was originally worried that Jason would be hot-headed and agree directly, couldn't help but laugh in his heart at this moment. Kate gritted her teeth fiercely, and glared at the students around her who were laughing at her. Her face turned blue and white, and she said sadly, "Trash is trash. If you don't dare to accept the challenge, just say so. There is no need to make so many excuses." Who said I won't accept the challenge? Jason rolled his eyes at Kate in front of him, with a hint of sneer on his face. He stared coldly at Kate and said coldly, 3 days later, the academy Jason is waiting for you at the martial arts training ground. Sensing Jason's cold gaze, for some reason, Kate felt as if she was being targeted by some kind of beast. A cold sweat suddenly appeared on her back, and she said with a strong face, Kate will accompany you at the academy's martial arts training ground in 3 days. After hearing Jason's words, the faces of the surrounding students all showed surprise, and they all started talking. They never expected that Jason, who had said those words before, would actually agree to Kate's request for a duel. Jason, how can you agree? Instructor Feng Yi, who was standing between the two, also changed his expression at this moment. From his perspective, Jason, who had just reached the 6th level of spiritual power, had already reached the 8th level of spiritual power. Kate's life for more than half a year is basically the same as sending her to death. However, Stern Continent advocates martial arts. Although the academy does not allow students to fight in private, even Feng Yi, as a teacher in the academy, has no right to stop such public duels. Looking at teacher Feng Yi, who looked at him with some reproach and some anxiety in his eyes, Jason smiled slightly and said, "Don't worry, teacher Feng Yi, I just see that he is a little unhappy." After speaking, he turned and walked towards the gate of the college. Since the original owner of this body is so resentful towards Kate, then I will grant his wish. Muttering silently in his heart, Jason couldn't help clenching his fists as he walked out of the academy gate. In 3 days, it seems that the training plan will be changed. After strolling around the market outside again, buying some basic materials and understanding the situation, Jason went straight back to the academy without wasting much time. In Jason's original plan, these 3 days were mainly used to find some materials, and if he wanted to create a spiritual pendant that could create a gravity space, some of the materials were not too precious. But it was quite rare, and it took Jason a lot of time to find it. However, due to the duel with Kate 3 days later, Jason had to put these things on hold for the time being. Back in the dormitory, Carrot, who had disappeared for a day, had not come back yet. Jason was already used to this kind of thing. Not to mention not seeing his roommate Carrot for a day, but not seeing other people for a few days. This is also a common occurrence in Sen's memory. After placing the purchased materials in his cabinet, Jason went to the bathroom again and filled the big wooden bucket with water. This time, Jason did not pour only 1 drop of bodybuilding spirit liquid into the wooden barrel, but poured 3 drops. Under the influence of those 3 drops of bodybuilding spirit liquid, in a short time, the clear water in the barrel in front of Jason has turned deep red. Taking off his clothes, Jason soaked into the barrel again. Jason slowly closed his eyes, and quickly recalled in his mind a book of exercises that he had obtained from an ancient ruins in his previous life. Come. When Jason accepted Kate's challenge this morning, he did not accept it impulsively. In his previous life, Jason was a 9th level elixir master. If he could not successfully defeat a spiritual master with a 6th level spiritual power, Jason would, with Kate having level 8 spiritual power, there is no need for him to be the number 1 person in the continent. In fact, If Jason is given enough materials and time to prepare some spiritual potions, Jason can even guarantee that he will not fall behind in the hands of a 6th level spiritual master. Of course, the premise is that Jason's strength must be restored to the level of the 9th level elixir master in his previous life. If you just rely on your own spiritual power level, even though the meridians from level 1 to level 6 in Jason's body are all filled with level 6 spiritual power, the level 6 spiritual power in Jason's body is enough to be more than the level 6 spiritual power of ordinary students. Several times more, and the 6th level spiritual power that has turned into light white air flow is far more powerful than the 6th level spiritual power of ordinary students. But after all, Jason's own level at the moment is only spiritual power level 6. No matter how strong he is, he can only ensure that he will not fall behind in the battle with ordinary students with spiritual power level 7, but he has to compete with students who have spiritual power level 8. Compared to Kate, who has been immersed in it for more than half a year, there is still a big gap in both the level of spiritual power and the amount of spiritual power stored in the body. The reason why Jason can really agree to Kate's challenge is because of the technique that Jason wants to practice now. The technique that he wants to practice now is a technique that he got in an ancient ruins, called Spirit God Technique. In Stern Continent, the levels of spiritual power skills are divided into 4 levels from high to low: sun, moon, stars, and stars. Each level is divided into 3 levels: upper, middle, and lower. A total of 4 levels and 12 levels. There are the most Chen level skills in the mainland, but not everyone can get them. Some small families or libraries in colleges have some low-level or mid-level Chen level skills. As for the star level exercises, only some of the kingdom's big families or members of the kingdom's royal family can practice them. Some famous strong men in the kingdom also practice star level exercises. Moon level skills are quite rare on the mainland. I am afraid that only some of the imperial royal families on the mainland, or the top experts in the empire, or even the top experts in the mainland can obtain and practice them. Sun level skills are almost legendary, and are almost unheard of in the entire continent. In his previous life, when Jason was a 9th level elixir master, the 9th level holy masters who followed him were among the best in the continent. Strong men, and the most powerful one among them, Jason only knew that he was practicing a high-grade moon-level technique. When Jason obtained the spiritual god technique, the level of the spiritual god technique was not marked on it. But when Jason obtained the spiritual god technique in the ancient ruins, next to the spiritual god technique, the formulas of the 2 holy level spiritual potions. The Vulcan liquid prepared by Jason was one of those 2 formulas. And as Jason, there are basically any techniques on the mainland that he wants. You can see it by looking at it, so when you see the spiritual god technique, based on Jason's experience, you can be sure that it is at least a monthly mid-level or above skill. Sitting cross-legged in the wooden barrel, feeling the huge energy coming from the bodybuilding spiritual liquid around his body, Jason closed his eyes and began to slowly mobilize the 6th level spiritual power in his body. When a large amount of 6th level spiritual power gathered together and reached sufficient strength, Jason stopped gathering spiritual power. The thick 6th level spiritual power began to move along one of Jason's meridians toward Jason's right hand. An extremely remote meridian pulsed away. Powerful energy surged forward in the slender meridians like a savage beast. The overwhelmed slender meridians shattered like glass in an instant. The severe pain caused Jason's whole body to twitch involuntarily while soaking in the barrel. He looked up, his flushed face covered with big drops of sweat. Gritting his teeth, Jason didn't hum. He controlled the 6th level spiritual power condensed in his body, slowly squeezing forward through the slender meridians like a heavy motorcycle rolling over the road. An ordinary person would have fainted long ago in the pain of such severe meridians. Even an ordinary 6th level spiritual master would not be able to stay awake in such huge pain. But Jason's soul traveled through time after all, even though his spiritual consciousness is not powerful, but the powerful soul power makes Jason's perception of pain extremely clear. Chi, chi, chi. After a long time, 5 subtle popping sounds suddenly sounded in the shower room. 5 streams of light white air spurted out from the 5 fingertips of Jason's right hand in an instant, and then slowed down. Slowly dissipated in the air, the meridians in Jason's right hand had been opened by Jason's impact, and the width of the meridians expanded 10 times more than before. After a brief rest, Jason wiped the sweat from his forehead, took a deep breath, gritted his teeth, and once again controlled the condensed 6th-level spiritual power to crush the meridians of his left arm Wudong Qian. Under Jason's hard training, it was not until dusk in the afternoon that Jason, who was sitting cross-legged in the barrel, opened his eyes and stood up. After nearly a day of practice, Jason finally opened up several tiny meridians in his arms and legs. With the repair of the bodybuilding liquid, even though the meridians that had just been opened in Jason's body were still a little fragile, but it has basically been repaired. After pouring out the clear water that had become transparent in the barrel, Jason changed into clean clothes. He hadn't eaten anything in the past day, and his stomach couldn't help but make a growl at this moment. Just when Jason was about to go out for dinner, there was a sudden knock on the door of the dormitory. Jason opened the door and saw Teacher Klein standing outside the door anxiously. After seeing Jason, Teacher Klein's face was slightly happy at first, and then a trace of anger climbed on his face. "You kid, who asked you to accept Kate's challenge?" Before Jason could speak, Teacher Klein started to teach him a lesson. Through what happened yesterday, Klein, who learned from his teacher, Master Bispham, that Jason was very knowledgeable in elixirs, didn't sleep well the whole night last night. As the teacher who taught Jason spiritual medicine, Klein knew Jason quite well. Jason and Carrot, who had never paid much attention in his class, had always been Klein's hatred. However, compared to Carrot, who had already reached the 5th level of elixir, and Jason, who had been studying in his class for 2 years but still only had the 1st level of elixir, Klein was even more speechless. But the changes that had happened to Jason in the past 2 days made Klein feel dumbfounded. Until now, she was still a little confused in her mind, especially last night when Jason was talking to his mentor Bisfa. When Master Mu discussed extremely advanced things in elixir science, Klein couldn't help but blush. It turned out that the young man he usually criticized constantly in class actually had a profound foundation in the theory of elixir medicine that was no less than that of his mentor. After overhearing the news in the office that Jason was going to duel with Kate, Klein was immediately worried. She was very clear about Jason's strength. He had just broken through the 6th level of spiritual power 2 days ago. If he faced him, he would have already reached the spiritual power level. Kate, who has been in level 8 for more than half a year, will definitely have a narrow escape from death. No, it is very likely that she will have a narrow escape from death. Klein was extremely angry and rushed to Jason's dormitory to ask him what he thought. Klein, who had secretly told himself not to yell at Jason again yesterday, couldn't help but lecture him as usual after Jason opened the door. "Forget it, follow me to see Kate immediately and cancel the duel between you. I know there is a conflict between Kate and you, but there is something that cannot be resolved properly." "Teacher Klein, you don't believe it." "Me?" Jason didn't say anything, but looked at Klein in front of him with burning eyes. Although Jason knew that Teacher Klein was doing it for his own good, he still felt a little dissatisfied at this moment. This looking at Jason's bright eyes, full of incomparable confidence, and thinking of what happened in the past 2 days and Jason's ability to remain calm despite a huge crisis yesterday, Klein was speechless for a moment. But having said that, after seeing off Klein and having dinner, Jason returned to the dormitory again without taking much rest. Thick and majestic spiritual power flowed through the meridians in his body, and a rare smile appeared on Jason's face. 3 days later, early morning. Duels between students are not common for the 6th Spiritual Power Academy, but they are not rare either. After all, there are often conflicts between people, and in this world of spiritual masters where strength is respected, some helpless, the best way to resolve conflicts is a private duel. As an excellent duel venue in the academy, the martial arts training ground is already surrounded by a large number of students. Considering the current national conditions of the Kingdom of Orlando, Kate has reached the 8th level of spiritual power at the age of 19 and is about to break through the 9th level of spiritual power. His strength cannot be regarded as a genius, but he can still be regarded as quite gifted. As long as you work hard in the future and after some training, you can reach the level of a 3rd level spiritual master, you can be considered a well-known figure in a city, and if you are lucky enough to reach the level of a 4th level heavenly spiritual master, even and he is quite famous in the kingdom. But at this moment, the huge crowds of people in the Academy's martial arts training ground are not here for Kate, who has an 8th level of spiritual power. What attracts them is the one who was previously known as the #1 loser in the Sith Spiritual Power Academy. Jason was about to be dismissed by the college during the assessment, but he got lucky and advanced in the last assessment. After the students in the academy heard the news that Jason was going to duel with Kate, the first reaction in everyone's mind was that Jason was crazy. The second reaction was, how could such a wonderful thing be missed so easily? When Jason arrived at the academy's martial arts training ground, nearly 1,000 students had already surrounded the training ground, filling the training ground into 3 floors. The outer 3 floors were crowded with people. Look, Jason is here. Ha ha ha, the show is about to begin. Isn't Jason stupid? He actually dares to come. You have to know the strength of Senior Kate. But it's 2 levels higher than him. In my opinion, Senior Kate only needs 2 moves to defeat the best loser in the academy. I think he doesn't know how to write the word death. You man who wants to save face, I think this is going to be a good show. Jason walked through the crowd. Along the way, everyone around Jason pointed at him wherever he passed. Most people's faces were full of ridicule for Jason's overestimation, and some people's faces showed sympathy for Jason. Teacher Feng Yi, Teacher Klein. Jason came into the martial arts training ground and looked around. He couldn't help but was slightly startled when he saw a few people. At the tables on both sides of the training ground, Feng Yi and Klein were sitting there, and also sitting there were some teachers from the college. In the middle of a row of tables, a middle-aged man that Jason had never seen before was sitting there with a swagger. Several teachers from the college were next to the middle-aged man, with smiles on their faces, and the middle-aged man. What were the people talking about? Looking at their expressions, they were full of respect for the middle-aged man. Jason couldn't help feeling a little warm in his heart. Generally speaking, teachers would not get involved in duels between students. It was obvious that Feng Yi and Klein were worried about themselves, so they came here specially to have a look. A witness to prevent any accidents. How dare you come here? Kate looked at Jason with disdain on the martial arts field. Jason didn't say anything, and without stopping, he walked directly onto the martial arts training ground that was about a foot high. Jason, work hard. Just as Jason walked onto the martial arts field, a voice suddenly sounded from the crowd and reached Jason's ears. You must be sick. You actually cheer for Jason. You don't know that he is the #1 in our academy. After hearing that man cheering for Jason, some students nearby turned around in displeasure and blurted out a lesson. Stand up. But after seeing that person's appearance, all the students shut their mouths in an instant and turned their heads obediently. The person who cheered Jason on was one of the best among the students in the academy, and he was not something ordinary students like me could offend. Jason nodded slightly to Xiaobo, who was cheering for him in the crowd, and came to Kate. Son, show that kid some color. After seeing Jason come on stage, the middle-aged man sitting among the teachers suddenly became energetic and shouted to Kate on the training ground. This man was Talon, the city's city guard commander, Baron Harvey. Dad, just watch your son teach this loser a lesson. Kate's eyes looked at Jason like she was looking at a lamb being slaughtered, revealing an evil light. As the commander of the city guard of Talon City, Baron Harvey is mainly responsible for security patrols inside and outside Talon City. He can also be regarded as a figure in Talon City. Harvey, whose own strength has reached the 2nd level intermediate spiritual warrior, has always loved his son very much, and Kate, who has reached the 8th level of spiritual power at a young age, is also Baron Harvey's capital to show off in front of his friends, and often in front of others. Boasting that a tiger father has no dog sons. Baron Harvey knew about the duel between Kate and Jason that day, and Kate swore in front of Baron Harvey that she would beat Jason to the point of begging for mercy, so as to prove that her father was powerful and her son was also not a weak fact. Kate's words made Baron Harvey very angry. On the day of Kate's duel, Baron Harvey left all the affairs in the city guard and made a special trip to the Sith Academy of Spiritual Power, just to see the majesty of his son. Seeing to encourage his son. Lord Harvey, in my opinion, with Kate's strength, it only takes a few moves to deal with this kid Jason. Stowe, who was sitting next to Baron Harvey, saw that the duel was about to begin and immediately took pictures in advance. Fuck Harvey. Although Stowe, who is a teacher at the Sith Spiritual Power Academy, has reached the level of a 3rd-level low-level spiritual master and is considered a strong man in Talon City, Harvey, the Baron of the Kingdom, the Chief of Talon City Guards, and the Noble of the Kingdom, in front of you, you have to call me sir respectfully. Haha, Teacher Stowe was joking. Since that kid agreed to Quanzi's duel invitation, he must have some strength. However, as a father, I am quite aware of Quanzi's strength. With a few moves, although it is unlikely, but it's not impossible. After hearing what Mr. Stowe said, Baron Harvey immediately narrowed his eyes into a thin line as he smiled, grinning with joy. Mr. Harvey, please be humble. I know that Kate, a student, is quite eye-catching in the academy. Like father, like son. It is very possible to defeat Jason in a few tricks. Yes, I heard that even Dean Bispham seemed to have praised Kate's talent as a spiritual master once. Seeing that Stowe had taken the advantage, the other teachers nearby felt in their hearts cursing secretly. With a smile on his face, he slapped Harvey in the face. He didn't care whether this was the case or not. He made up some good words to slap him first. Oh, even Master Bispham praised Quanzi? The flattery of several teachers made Baron Harvey laugh so hard that his teeth almost fell off, and his face was filled with an extremely proud look. Feng Yi and Klein frowned when they heard the disgusting words next to them, but they didn't say anything more. They just cast encouraging glances at Jason on the stage. Boy, are you ready to accept Uncle Kate's crazy attack? Standing on the martial arts training ground, Kate looked at Jason with contempt. In fact, despite Kate's apparent indifference, he was fully prepared before coming. Under Kate's coat, she was wearing a piece of soft armor that Baron Harvey had previously obtained. That soft armor could even resist the normal spiritual attack of a 1st-level spiritual disciple, coupled with Kate's own spiritual power of level 8, made Kate so relieved when facing Jason, who only had level 6 spiritual power. Stop talking nonsense, come right over if you have the guts. Jason replied to Kate expressionlessly, and then said to the referee on the side, "Can we start?" He looked at both sides who were ready. The referee in charge of this duel nodded and said, "Although this is a duel that both parties voluntarily participate in, and the purpose is to resolve personal grievances, it is absolutely not allowed to hurt other people's lives. Stop it as soon as possible, otherwise you will be responsible for the consequences." Although the Sith Spiritual Power Academy does not prohibit duels between students, there are still certain regulations and requirements. After all, the academy is a place for learning, not an arena for life and death battles. Let's begin. The referee stood between the two and waved his hand vigorously, then stepped aside. "Come on, loser, just come here. I want you to know, what is the difference between spiritual power level 8 and spiritual power level 6? Kate smiled contemptuously at Jason, but her body was already straightened after taking a posture. The 8th level spiritual power in her body accelerated at the same time. Although she had put on a piece of soft armor, Kate was not too careless and relaxed when facing Jason. "Don't worry, I won't violate the rules of the academy and kill you. You should be happy. I will only make you unable to take care of yourself for the rest of your life, and then get out of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy obediently. The 8th level spirit in the body, the Force was running along a certain route in the 8th level meridians. Kate held her breath and concentrated, preparing to use the spiritual skills she had recently learned to knock Jason to the ground in an instant. Jason had a slight smile on his face. The moment the referee said the start, the 6th level spiritual power in each of the meridians from level 1 to level 6 in his body started running at a crazy high speed. In an instant, it was like a flood that burst a dam, rushing towards Jason's legs. The meridians that have been opened in the past 2 days are flowing like crazy. Poof! A subtle explosion that was hard to detect suddenly sounded at Jason's feet. Jason's figure swayed slightly, and his feet suddenly exerted force. In the next moment, his whole body turned into an afterimage, heading towards Kate's place shot away. Sneak step! He shouted softly in his heart. Jason's feet moved quickly on the martial arts training ground. The 6th level spiritual power continued to flow through the meridians of Jason's legs at a high speed, and hit the martial arts training ground through the meridians on the soles of his feet. On the ground, transformed into momentum of high-speed movement, shaking crazily on the large martial arts field. No way! Kate's eyes widened, trying to capture Jason's movements on the field, but she only saw a group of shaking afterimages. With only naked eye observation, Kate was unable to lock on to the high-speed moving Jason. Jason, with his spiritual perception, this is a skill only possessed by a true first-level spiritual disciple. For a moment, Kate couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Wow! The students watching in the audience couldn't help but let out waves of shocking screams after seeing Jason's movement skills. As students of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy, the strongest among these people is only at the 9th level of spiritual power. With their eyesight, they can only see that Jason, who has turned into an afterimage at this moment, is moving at an extremely fast speed. Kate keeps getting closer to the other side of the martial arts training ground, and the others are unaware of it. This person can't be seen, so how can he be beaten? After Stowe and the others saw Jason's movements, they who were flattering Harvey suddenly closed their mouths, with extremely surprised expressions on their faces, and then turned their attention to Fonyi aside. On the body. In their minds, it was definitely Fonyi, Jason's mentor, who secretly taught Jason this weird movement technique that even he himself had no reputation for. Okay, Fonyi, I didn't expect this guy to have such a movement technique. I have never seen him before, this guy is really well hidden. This movement, Fonyi, who was sitting there peacefully, couldn't help but almost stood up at this moment. The strongest among all the people present was probably him who had reached the 3rd level of senior spiritual master. At this moment, he was also shocked. He clearly remembered that he had never taught Jason such a weird body. F.A., how did he learn this body technique? Did you see it in the college library? That's not right, I don't seem to have seen any secrets on such techniques in the academy library. Under the surprised gazes of everyone in the audience, Jason had already arrived in front of Kate the next moment. Kate, who was unable to capture Jason at all, could only distribute her 8th level spiritual power around her body, waving it around in an unquestionable defense. In the eyes of those sharp-eyed college teachers, Jason came to Kate and placed his hands on Kate's chest without any fancy. The hands that moved at high speed made a soft sound in the air, breaking the airflow and space between the two people. It was like hitting a ragbag, making a dull sound. Huh. With a muffled sound, Kate's whole body was like a paper kite with its string broken, falling heavily and flying into the air, flying a full distance of 5 or 6 meters, and then he fell hard on the granite training ground and let out a painful groan. Silence, the whole place was silent. The entire martial arts training ground was silent for an instant. The students who were still talking to each other or screaming because of Jason's strange movements suddenly widened their eyes, with extremely incredible looks on their faces. With one move, Jason, who was known as the best loser in the Sith Spiritual Power Academy, knocked away Kate, who was considered a popular figure in the academy, with just one move. The whole process was completed in one go, without any sloppiness, giving people a pleasing feeling. With just one move, Kate has reached the 8th level of spiritual power. Kate, who was still standing there alive and kicking before, is now lying on the field in pain. Everyone watching the battle was stunned at the dramatic scene, and their brains were all short-circuited in an instant. However, at this moment, Jason did not have time to test the results of his battle. The 6th level spiritual power in his body had previously been the high-speed operation, and consumption did not slow down because of the end of Jason's exertion. Instead, they reached a highly active state because of Jason's previous battle. A large amount of pale 6th level spiritual power circulated rapidly in the 6 meridians from level 1 to level 6 in Jason's body, and finally converged into a milky white flow of spiritual power in the 6th level meridians. The high concentration of level 6 spiritual power squeezed it was touching Jason's 6th level meridians, and was constantly lingering and surging at the entrance of the 7th level meridians. Jason knew in his heart that the strength of the 6th level spiritual power in his body had reached an insurmountable peak due to the previous use of sneak steps and collapse fists. Now, it was the best time for him to attack the 7th level spiritual power. If you don't attack the 7th level spiritual power now, but choose to suppress the almost boiling 6th level spiritual power, then this will not only cause great damage to your body, but also bring trouble to your future training as a spiritual master. Irreparable trauma. Thinking of this, Jason closed his eyes in front of everyone without any hesitation. There was no need for him to deliberately mobilize all the 6th level spiritual powers in Jason's body. The moment Jason closed his eyes, they were like soldiers who had received orders from a general. In an instant, they all gathered together and faced Jason. The 7th level in the body launched a fierce charge. The thick 6th level milky white spiritual air flow is like a stormy wave crashing on the shore, roaring and roaring, as if the endless waves are constantly impacting towards the 7th level past Jason actually advanced. This seeing Jason slowly closing his eyes on the martial arts training ground, subtle spiritual energy fluctuations came from around Jason's body. Teacher Feng Yi, who was sitting in the audience, could no longer stand. He stood up instantly. As a 3rd level senior spiritual master, he naturally understood that Jason was in a state of impacting the 7th level spiritual meridians at this moment, but you must know that Jason had only advanced to the 6th level before the last assessment. Even if he was promoted to the 6th level of spiritual power not long after the last assessment, it only took 3 months at most. If Feng Yi knew that Jason had just been promoted to the 6th level of spiritual power on the night before the last assessment, and it was only a few days before he was promoted to the 7th level of spiritual power, Feng Yi would be shocked. The blood spurted out wildly. It takes a few days to advance to the 1st level. Such speed has never appeared in the entire history of spiritual masters. The vast majority of the students present did not understand what Jason was doing standing on the stage with his eyes closed at this moment. Although they all had similar experiences, they simply could not distinguish the words Jason on the stage and promotion. Linked together, after all, this is too exaggerated. Baron Harvey had a cold face and looked at Jason with his eyes closed on the stage with twinkling eyes. He didn't know what he was thinking in his heart, and the teachers who were originally flattering him all closed their mouths now, looking at the stage with great embarrassment. The referee on the stage looked helplessly at Jason, who had his eyes closed, and Kate lying there. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell the result of the duel at a glance, but after Jason finished the fight, he just stood there with his eyes closed, saying nothing. "What do you mean if you don't say it?" Ahem. Just when the referee was about to raise his hand to award Jason the victory, Kate, who was lying there, suddenly coughed, and then slowly stood up amidst the buzzing discussion in the audience. A trace of blood snaked down the corner of Kate's mouth. With lingering fear, her right hand touched the chest that had been hit by Jason before. Kate had a cruel look on her face. Fortunately, I was more cautious when I came here in the morning and wore soft armor. Otherwise, I am afraid that I would have been seriously injured by now. This damn waste. Kate cursed secretly in her heart. Thinking of her previous humiliation in front of everyone, Kate couldn't help but feel a trace of anger in her heart. Looking at Jason standing on the stage with his eyes closed, driven by anger, the 8th-level spiritual power in Kate's body started to operate crazily in an instant. The spiritual power circulated through the various meridians in Kate's body to the whole body, forming a unique cycle. Huge energy gathered in Kate's body, brewing a thunderous strike. Just when the 8th-level spiritual power in her body was about to reach its peak, Kate's feet suddenly exerted force, and her whole body rushed towards Jason's location. After seeing that Kate was about to launch an attack, Feng Ye's expression suddenly changed. He deeply understood what would happen if Jason, who was currently in the process of promotion, was attacked by Kate at this time. The spiritual structure in his body would be broken. Jason would most likely be killed instantly by Kate's blow. Although he was extremely anxious, Feng Ye could not step forward to stop the duel. No one except the parties involved had the right to stop the two people in the duel. This is the rule of duels between spiritual masters. The dignity of spiritual masters cannot be tolerated. Trample. In just a moment, Kate was in front of Jason. There was a surge of spiritual power around her body. Kate's fists were already fiercely swinging at Jason, and the strong wind of the fist was squeezing the air, constantly emitting a burst of subtle explosions, carrying huge energy, moving forward indomitably. At this moment, the 6th-level spiritual power in Jason's body broke through the 7th-level meridians. A large amount of 7th-level spiritual power surged into Jason's 7th-level meridians like a flood, and then like a lake returning to the sea, flowing freely in the 7th-level meridians. Just when Kate's fists were about to hit Jason, Jason's eyes suddenly opened. A gleam of light flashed through Jason's eyes, and then a loud shout suddenly burst out from Jason's mouth. Facing Kate's fists that were so close at hand, a strong wind suddenly passed through the entire venue. In the next moment, Jason's fists were already fiercely facing Kate with a cruel look in his eyes. Boom! A huge roar sounded, and the powerful spiritual impact formed a violent energy storm in the middle of the field, stirring up a cloud of smoke and dust. Along with the explosion, there was also a blast of bones like fried beans. There was a sound of shattering, and blood flying all over the sky. Pung! A figure was thrown out of the smoke, flying 7 or 8 meters in the air, and then fell heavily on the field. The smoke and dust dispersed, and Jason stood on the martial arts training ground with a calm face. A fierce and powerful aura emerged from his body, unmoving. On the other side of the training ground, the robe on Kate who fell to the ground had been broken into countless pieces, revealing the soft armor with a crack inside. This soft armor could resist the attacks of first-order spiritual disciples. Under Sen's attack, it was severely damaged. Looking at Kate who was unconscious with her arms twisted and a pool of blood on her chest, Jason exhaled slightly and said to the referee standing aside, "Okay, please judge the winner or loser." Oh. After hearing Jason's reminder, the referee came back to his senses and announced, "Student Kate is unconscious, and student Jason wins." After saying that, the referee couldn't help but carefully wipe the sweat from his forehead and thought to himself, "I didn't expect that students of different levels of spiritual power would fight so bloodily." Such scenes are quite rare even in duels between first-level spiritual disciples. Son. At this moment, Baron Harvey, who was sitting below, suddenly rushed up to the martial arts training ground and came to Kate's side. After checking Kate's injuries, Baron Harvey's eyes immediately turned sharp. It landed on Jason on the other side. The two guards following Baron Harvey also jumped out at this time, drew their weapons, and pointed them at Jason on the training ground. "This is the Sith Spiritual Power Academy. Baron Harvey, do you want to violate the duel between spiritual masters?" Two figures suddenly fell between Jason and the two guards. It was Feng Yi and Ku Lane, two people. The other teachers stood there looking at each other. The entire martial arts training ground was suddenly filled with a very strong smell of gunpowder, and the atmosphere between the two sides was like a taut bowstring, on the verge of breaking out. Looking at Feng Yi and Klein, who were standing in front of him, Baron Harvey took a deep look at Jason on the other side of the martial arts training ground. Although he was the commander of the city guard of Talon City, he was in the West spirit. He didn't dare to be too presumptuous in a spiritual master academy like the Academy of Strength. "Let's go." Knowing that he couldn't take advantage now, he said in a low voice, then picked up the unconscious Kate in front of him and walked towards the outside of the martial arts training ground. The two guards who had been following Baron Harvey hurriedly put away their weapons after hearing Baron Harvey's instructions. They exhaled softly. The two looked at each other, their hearts extremely nervous. It was only then that he let go and followed Baron Harvey out of the training ground of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy. You must know that the two of them are only first-level senior spiritual disciples. Although their strength in the Talon City Guards is not low, when facing Feng Yi, a third-level senior spiritual master, the two of them, my palms, which were still nervous before, were sweating. If he really wanted to make a move, with Feng Yi's strength, he could knock them both down with just a few moves, without any suspense at all. "Teacher Feng Yi, Teacher Klein, thank you." Jason thanked the two of them. Looking at the two people standing in front of him without hesitation, Jason felt slightly moved in his heart. If Jason in his previous life encountered such a thing, there would be countless people who wanted to stand up for him, but now he is just an ordinary student. Feng Yi and Klein, there was almost no selfishness in standing up, and some were just caring for him. As a person with a clear sense of grudges, Jason buried this gratitude deeply in his heart. If there is a chance in the future, he will repay the kindness of the two teachers to him. Glancing at Lucy, who was standing by blankly, somewhat at a loss, Jason's face showed no expression. Amid the envious and astonished gazes of the surrounding students, Jason walked out of the Academy's martial arts training ground as if there was no one around. As they walked along, all the students involuntarily moved out of the way, looking at Jason, whispering to each other, with nothing but incomparable awe in their eyes. In this world where strength is respected, Jason, who defeated Kate, who was about to enter the 8th level of spiritual power with one move, can definitely be ranked as one of the top figures in the Academy. You must know that those who have reached spiritual power level 9 seniors who have been at the level for a long time may not be able to defeat Kate, who is about to enter the 9th level of spiritual power, with one move. What's more, not long ago, Jason was the first student in the Academy to be expelled from the Academy, and his strength has been stuck at the 5th level of spiritual power for nearly 2 years. In the minds of all the students, what Jason revealed to them at this moment was not only his strength, but also a mysterious aura. Looking at the background of Jason slowly disappearing at the entrance of the martial arts training ground, Feng Yi and Klein looked at each other, with joyful smiles on their faces. Before the game, the two of them actually didn't have much confidence in Jason's duel, but Jason told them with actual actions that his agreement was not a whim. At this moment, Feng Yi and Klein didn't know how much their concern for Jason would bring to their future. "Look, isn't that Lucy?" "It's really Lucy. I heard that the duel between Jason and Kate seemed to have happened because of her." Sure enough, beauty is a curse. What happened to Senior Jason just now made Senior Kate unable to get out of bed for 10 days and a half. Now Senior Kate has been taken away by his father, and she is the only one left here. I don't know if she regrets it in her heart. Speaking of Senior Jason's last move before, TSK, it was really powerful. You can't blame me for this. After all, Senior Jason was in a dormant period before, and Senior Kate also has 8 spiritual powers. Grade, my father is also the commander of the city guards. It is common to be confused for a moment. I can only blame her for her lack of vision. Hey, I have long seen that Senior Jason is not simple. Just you? TSK, you are the one. Come on, who wanted to bet with me before the duel that a certain loser would be defeated in a few moves? Shoo, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say this randomly. After hearing what his companion said, the student hurriedly covered his mouth, looked around carefully, and said in a relaxed voice, "I can tell you, Senior Jason is my idol Lucy," who was standing on the edge of the martial arts training ground with a somewhat at a loss expression, listening to the whispers of the students in my ears. The tip of my nose was slightly sore, the corners of my eyes were moist, and my heart was filled with bitterness for a moment. "Do you really regret it?" Lucy secretly asked herself. There was no answer. She only knew that Jason's heroic gesture when he knocked Kate away had been deeply imprinted in her heart. He was just as heroic as the genius Jason back then. After leaving the Academy's martial arts training ground, Jason walked straight towards the laboratory of the Academy's elixir department without any pause. After a while, after paying a certain fee to the teacher on duty, Jason had already arrived at his private room. In the laboratory. After entering the private laboratory, the first thing Jason did was to sit down cross-legged in a corner of the laboratory. He had just broken through to the 7th level of spiritual power in battle. What he needed to do most now was to consolidate the 7th level of spiritual power in his body. Having studied the complete theoretical system of spiritual power cultivation in later generations, he deeply understood that every time the consolidation after the upgrade will be of great benefit to the cultivation of spiritual power in the future. The 7th level spiritual power in the body circulates along a fixed route over and over again in the 7th level meridians, and is then transported to various parts of the body, flowing week after week, over and over again, and Jason's in his mind, he kept recalling the entire previous battle over and over again. I don't know how long it took, but Jason's closed eyes suddenly opened in an instant. A strong breath came out of Jason's mouth, and a ray of light suddenly passed on Jason's face. Feeling the steady aerosol-like 7th level spiritual power in the 7th level meridians in his body, a slight smile appeared on Jason's face. The spiritual power that was originally filled in the meridians of levels 1 to 6 in Jason's body has completely disappeared at this moment. The originally expanded meridians of levels 1 to 6 can only instill spiritual power of level 6 at most. In Jason's spiritual power after upgrading to 1 level, the originally expanded meridians need to be expanded even more strongly. But these are all the things that Jason needs to do tonight. Now Jason has a more important thing to do, which is to prepare a 3rd level high-grade potion that in the world of elixir masters at this moment, the technology is not yet fully mature, rejuvenation potion. With a slight breath in his mouth, Jason, who had gone through training before, his eyes were shining brightly and he was full of energy. The materials purchased in Talon City Square 3 days ago were placed one by one on the experimental table. Then, Jason took out a potion bottle containing pink liquid from his body. This bottle of spiritual potion is the same bottle of 2nd level high-grade spiritual potion, coagulant, that Klein gave Jason for fear of being injured. In Jason's later generations, the spirit-restoring potion was only a 3rd level high-quality potion with extremely mature technology. Any spiritual pharmacist who had reached the 4th level spiritual medicine master could prepare it. However, 3,000 years ago, the development of spiritual medicine masters was still in a state of ignorance. Now, the spirit-restoring potion is an emerging spiritual medicine that can restore the spiritual power of a spiritual master in a short period of time. Its preparation is quite difficult. Although the mainland elixir masters union rated this highly effective elixir at the 3rd level, which is not too high, looking at the entire continent, most of the 4th level elixir masters are currently unable to prepare this elixir. Potions, even some high-level 5th level elixir masters may not be able to successfully prepare high-quality soul-restoring potions. You must know that in the entire kingdom of Orlando, the highest level elixir master, Lord Rudolph, the elixir master of the kingdom's palace, is currently only a 5th level senior elixir master. This can be seen from the Stern's role in the recovery potion at this time. How rare it is on the mainland. After calming down, Jason took a deep breath, and his whole person suddenly entered an ethereal state. In his perception, everything in the entire laboratory had disappeared, and the only thing that existed was the bottle of coagulant on the laboratory table in front of me, as well as the other materials needed. After a snap of his fingers, Jason suddenly moved, and a black shadow suddenly passed over the coagulant on the experimental table. The entire coagulant instantly turned into a pink disk, like the scorching sun rising at the end of the continent in the morning, slowly rose into the air. Jason frowned. As his hands trembled rapidly and under the control of the release of the 7th-level spiritual power in his body, the pink disk formed by the coagulant changed in size and shape. Gradually, the entire pink disk turned into 3 colors. The outermost layer was a colorless halo, the middle layer was a red halo, and the innermost one was a small lavender halo. Disk. Under Jason's control, the 3 main elixir elements that originally composed the coagulant have been completely decomposed at this moment. Jason wanted to do this in his previous life, but he couldn't do it with his current physical strength. But now, under the dual control of 7th-level spiritual power, Jason has successfully completed this step. There was no joy on Jason's face. His bright eyes were just staring at the coagulant flying in the air in front of him. The high intensity and violent exercise made his forehead covered with sweat, winding down the ravine on the face. Drink. Suddenly, Jason let out a loud shout, and several phantoms passed by in midair. The next moment, 3 bottles of filled bottles were neatly placed on the experimental table in front of Jason. There was a small amount of lavender potion in the potion bottle, and the mouth of the potion bottle, containing a small amount of lavender potion, was even steaming slightly. There was no pause at all, and he didn't even have time to wipe the sweat from his forehead. As phantoms passed by, various materials placed in front of Jason were already arranged in a certain proportion and time under the dance of Jason's right hand. Put into the potion bottle. The extremely strong smell of various medicinal materials permeated the entire laboratory in an instant. Based on the knowledge of elixirs learned from the 8th-level elixir masters, Dean Bispham, and Teacher Klein, who followed him in his previous life, Jason controlled his somewhat weak 7th-level spiritual consciousness, carefully felt every tiny spiritual element change in the potion bottle, slowly controlled the input of the 7th-level spiritual power in his body, and participated in the preparation of the spiritual potion. Half an hour, 2 hours, I don't know how long it took. Just when Jason was covered in sweat and the 7th-level spiritual power in his body was about to be exhausted, the spirit in the potion bottle, which was originally slow to react and extremely calm, the potion suddenly and violently tumbled in an instant, and streams of hot air surged out from the mouth of the bottle. After a moment, the elixir that was tumbling violently calmed down in an instant. A layer of deep purple elixir, like the highest quality amethyst without any impurities, appeared in front of Jason and was placed quietly. That's extremely noble. Dividing the dark purple spiritual potion in the potion bottle in front of him into 3 equal parts, Jason picked up the non-attributed spiritual element basic potion on the side and diluted the 3 bottles containing a small amount of dark purple spiritual potion into 3 bottles of lavender spiritual healing potion. Purple streams of color were looming in the potion bottles, indicating the identities of the 3 bottles of spiritual potions in front of Jason, 3rd-level high-grade spirit-restoring potions. With a long breath in his mouth, Jason, who had almost exhausted his level 7 spiritual energy, weakly wiped the sweat from his forehead. Feeling that he was soaked all over and almost fished out of the lake, he looked at the person in front of him. With 3 bottles of high-quality soul-restoring potion, Jason felt extremely satisfied. Throughout the previous preparation process, although Jason, who only had a 7th-level spiritual consciousness, could not feel many changes in the spiritual elements in the potion bottle, and the weak 7th-level spiritual power could not greatly affect the conversion of spiritual elements in the potion bottle. But it was Jason's first time to organically and successfully combine spiritual consciousness, spiritual power, and the technical flow potion he created in his previous life. Although it was not perfect, it was the result of relying solely on technical flow in his previous life. Jason, who has reached the 9th level of Elixir Master, has embarked on the path of an orthodox elixir master for the first time, taking a solid first step towards the goal of spiritual God. Sitting quietly in the corner of the laboratory, Jason recovered the almost exhausted 7th-level spiritual power in his body. He then placed the 3 bottles of spirit-restoring potion close to his body, walked out of the private laboratory to the teacher on duty, and walked towards him with flying strides. Go to the largest auction house in Talon City. Primitive accumulation is relatively difficult. If Jason in his previous life wanted to make a spiritual pendant, it would not take so much effort. Just open his mouth and there would be countless empires, families, and strong men on the continent. Send it proactively. But after rebirth, if Jason wanted to obtain the simplest spiritual power pendant, he had to prepare some potions. After the auction, he would have enough strength to purchase the materials needed to make the spiritual power pendant. As Jason walked quickly, within a short time, the largest auction house in Talon City, Oliver Auction House, appeared in front of Jason. Oliver Auction House is the largest auction house in Talon City and the largest chain auction house in the Kingdom of Orlando. It belongs to the richest Oliver family in the Kingdom of Orlando. In the Kingdom of Orlando, in terms of wealth, the Oliver family should be second to none. The Oliver family is one of the 3 founding heroes of the kingdom. Hundreds of years ago, when Claire, the founding emperor of the Kingdom of Orlando, was fighting in the north and south on the land that is now the Kingdom of Orlando, the troops were very difficult due to a lack of money, and they have been failed to develop. Later, after receiving funding from the Oliver family, which was already a large family at that time, it really developed and expanded, opened up a piece of land, and established a new country. At that time, the Oliver family had no choice but to do this. This land was in the midst of war, and the Oliver family naturally could not stay alone. Among many people, they finally chose Claire, whom they were more optimistic about. After Claire finally won the victory and established the Kingdom of Orlando, she asked the Oliver family what they wanted. The Oliver family asked Claire to give them their original area, and also hoped that Claire would approve their withdrawal from the court. Claire missed the old friendship and was very grateful for the help of the Oliver family in the past. With a wave of her hand, she gave the head of the Oliver family at the time the first-class Duke of the Kingdom, and the hereditary title of Marquis for his descendants. He directly assigned the area in the northwest of the kingdom where the Oliver family is located as the territory. The Oliver family. After returning to their own territory, the Oliver family recuperated and established the Oliver Chamber of Commerce. Over the past hundreds of years, the Oliver family has gradually grown and formed an extremely large family in the Kingdom of Orlando. It is as rich as any other country, even today's Orlando. The king of the kingdom, Lecent, is also jealous of the wealth of the Oliver family. However, because the Oliver family has always followed the rules and behaved quite low-key over the years, they also pay a large amount of taxes to the kingdom's treasury every year. In addition, the ancestors of the Oliver family are after all one of the 3 founding heroes of the kingdom and are always protected by the kingdom. Therefore, they have always been stand firm. Looking at the extremely majestic building in front of him, Jason turned into a nearby alley with the rejuvenation potion in his arms. He put on a black cloak that he had bought before and drooped the wide brim of his hat, hiding Jason's face in darkness. After carefully checking his whole body, Jason walked out of the alley and calmly walked towards the Oliver auction house in front of him. Under the gaze of several armed guards at the door of the auction house, Jason walked straight into the auction house without stopping. As soon as he entered, the hot weather outside seemed to be blocked by an invisible wall. A cool feeling suddenly spread throughout Jason's body. My eyes wandered around the exterior hall of the auction house. The entire auction house was divided into several parts. Some were luxurious halls used for auctions, some were living rooms used to entertain guests, and others were used to collect items after the auction. Backstage hall. At the door of each hall, there are 2 guards with shining eyes, wearing uniforms, giving people an extremely capable feeling. With Jason's eyesight, he could tell at a glance that the strength of these guards was all second-order spiritual masters. Although through Jason's observation, these guards are probably just second-level low-level spiritual warriors, you must know that these guards are just guards guarding the gate of Oliver's auction house. After all, even the 2 personal guards around Baron Harvey, who is the commander of the Talon City Guards, are only first-level senior spiritual disciples. In Talon City, the only people with such a large amount of money are those belonging to the Oliver family, the richest man in the kingdom. The Oliver auction house has it. After browsing the outer hall of the auction house, Jason's eyes paused at the door of a room with 3 gilt characters on it, then he stepped forward and pushed the door open. What caught Jason's eyes was a room that was not too big. There was only one middle-aged man sitting in front of a table in boredom. He seemed to be holding a list in his hand and recording something. After hearing the sound of pushing the door, the middle-aged man raised his head. After seeing Jason wrapped in a black cloak, he frowned slightly, then with a formulaic smile on his face, he whispered, said, "Sir, do you want to appraise treasures?" "Yes." A low voice came out from his mouth. Jason did not speak, but gently placed the 3 bottles of spirit-reviving potion in front of the middle-aged man. On the table. Spiritual potion? After seeing Jason get the 3 bottles of lavender potion in front of him, the middle-aged man immediately straightened up involuntarily, with a gleam in his eyes and a trace of emotion in his tone unconsciously. "Respectfully, dear sir, may I ask what this elixir is?" The middle-aged man sitting in the treasure appraisal hall is a steward of Oliver Auction House, although he has met many big shots and countless people before. A rare item, but facing Jason in front of him at this moment, he didn't dare to look down upon him in the slightest. In Stern Continent, elixirs are the most noble profession, and elixirs are also the most expensive items. Although ordinary elixirs are expensive, they can be bought in specialized elixir stores, and they can be obtained from auction houses for appraisal. What is being auctioned are definitely some spiritual potions that have reached the 3rd level or above, or are extremely rare. 3rd level high-grade potion, spirit-reviving potion. Jason still spoke concisely and then fell silent. The middle-aged man's expression became even more respectful. "Sir, can you wait a moment? I need to ask Master Roney from the auction house to identify the elixir." "Well, hurry up." Jason waved to the middle-aged man, then sat on the chair and closed his eyes to rest. The middle-aged man, who received Jason's permission, stood up, nodded, and then hurried out of the room. Jason was not left waiting for long. After staying in the room for a while, the middle-aged man returned to the room again, but this time, he also brought an old man in green robe with white hair. The green-robed old man's chest was engraved with the emblem of the Medicine Master Guild, and around the emblem, there were 3 silver ripples, and on the edge of the outermost silver ripple, there was a trace of red ripples embroidered, shining with nobility of light. Jason, who was familiar with the alchemist system, could immediately tell the old man's level from the pattern on his chest. He was a 3rd level low-level elixir master, just like Mr. Klein, who taught Jason the alchemy master. "I added a collection today. A certain brother or a few brothers gave me 10 recommendations. I was very touched. At least let me know that there are still brothers here. I won't say anything else. Update. Sir, this is Master Ronnie from our auction house. He is a 3rd level elixir master and a master of Talon City. An elder of the Spiritual Medicine Master Guild." The middle-aged man introduced him respectfully. Jason nodded slightly, just looked at Ronnie in front of him, and then withdrew his gaze. Jason, who was a 9th level elixir master in his previous life, had nothing to pay attention to Ronnie, who was only a low-level 3rd level person. While Jason was sizing up the elixir master, Ronnie was also sizing up Jason secretly, guessing Jason's identity, but soon, Ronnie set his sights on the 3 bottles of elixir on the table in front of him. Superior. Somewhat cautiously, he took out a silver needle from his body. Ronnie gently dipped it in the purple elixir in the bottle, and then took out the silver needle. A trace of spiritual power quickly penetrated along the silver needle into the elixir at the tip of the needle. During the process, the spiritual consciousness that had reached the third level was also wrapped around the little bit of spiritual potion on the tip of the needle, and he carefully analyzed the elemental composition and efficacy of the spiritual potion. As time passed slowly, Ronnie's expression slowly changed from calm to solemn. After a while, Ronnie nodded slightly, with a trace of hesitation in his eyes, and then gently touched the needle tip in his hand. The tip of my tongue, then I closed my eyes and slowly experienced it. After a moment, Ronnie's eyes suddenly opened, and a ray of light flashed through them. He nodded to the middle-aged man beside him. That's right, it is indeed a third-level top-grade soul-restoring potion. At this moment, there was already a hint of respect in Jason's eyes. As a spiritual medicine master, Ronnie naturally understands the status of spiritual healing potions among spiritual potions. He can identify ordinary spiritual potions by just using his spiritual sense and spiritual power to sense them carefully, but when faced with the third-level high-grade healing potions, he didn't dare to be careless about the magical potion. He even tried a little bit personally before he could be sure. Just the little bit of spirit-reviving potion dipped into the needle tip had already caused a significant increase in the spiritual power in Ronnie's body. This made Ronnie not only sigh at the powerful effect of the spirit-reviving potion, but also be interested in making it. The elixir master who made such a high-quality soul-restoring potion was filled with reverence. After hearing what Ronnie said, the middle-aged man breathed a sigh of relief and said enthusiastically to Jason, "Sir, do you want to auction these 3 bottles of soul-reviving potion? Well, can you arrange the best solution for me? Is the auction time soon?" "Of course, sir, please register here. Our auction house happens to have an auction tonight, and your elixir will be on display." In middle age on the form handed over, Jason filled in some information at random, and in the name column, Jason filled in J's 2 letters. This information is only used by the auction house for record keeping. Generally, many people will not fill in the correct information for items that come from shady sources, and the auction house will not force them to ask. After the auction ends, transfer the money directly into this account. Jason filled in the card number of his spirit card directly in the information. He didn't want to go to the auction house again after the auction ended and cause some trouble. Jason is not afraid that the auction house will steal his money. As the richest Oliver family in the Kingdom of Orlando, they will not be short-sighted and steal their own money. Okay. After receiving the information handed over by Jason, the middle-aged man took out a black iron plate from the side and said respectfully to Jason, "Sir, your items will be auctioned tonight. It will be on display at the auction. If you want to participate in the auction, you can use this VIP ticket to enter the private room corresponding to the iron plate." "Yes." Taking the iron plate casually, Jason did not stop and stood between the two of them. While watching, he walked out of the room. "Master Ronnie, is he an elixir?" After seeing Jason disappear at the door, the middle-aged man asked in a low voice. "I'm not sure, but based on intuition, that person should be." Ronnie looked at Jason's disappearing back, with a trace of solemnity on his face, and then said to the middle-aged man, "By the way, these 3 bottles of soul-reviving potions are here today. Remember to put it on the finale item at the evening auction." "The finale item?" There was a trace of doubt on the middle-aged man's face. "Isn't this elixir just a third-level high-grade elixir? Although it is also extremely valuable, but there are many important items among the items tonight." Ronnie glanced at the middle-aged man next to him with a somewhat dissatisfied look. "This elixir is not an ordinary third-level high-grade elixir. I know today what important items are there in the evening auction. To say that they are more valuable than this elixir, there are really not many." "Yes." The middle-aged man lowered his head in embarrassment and looked at the elixir. In terms of understanding, there was more than 1,000 miles between him and Ronnie. From Master Ronnie's tone, the middle-aged man understood that he had previously far underestimated the value of the 3 bottles of soul-restoring potion in front of him. Thinking of this, the middle-aged man couldn't help but whispered, "Master Ronnie, do you need me to investigate his origins?" "No, if this elixir is really made by the other party, let alone us, even the Oliver family will not be easily offended." At this point, Ronnie's eyes couldn't help but reveal a trace of doubt. When will Talon City is there one more elixir master who can make a soul-restoring potion? For such a high-quality soul-restoring potion, I am afraid that even the president of the Elixir Masters Union, President Saha, who is a 4th-level intermediate elixir master, may not be able to produce such a high-quality soul-restoring potion. Can it be prepared? Thinking of this, Ronnie's eyes involuntarily fell on the information Jason had filled in before. When he saw the name column, Ronnie was stunned. JS? Isn't this the person President Saha has been looking for? Under the astonished eyes of the middle-aged man, Master Ronnie, who had been thinking about something before, seemed to be stunned for a moment, and then rushed out of the treasure appraisal hall. Seeing Ronnie, the guards at the door all shouted respectfully. Ronnie ignored it and rushed out of the auction house. He looked around the entire street but did not find any sign of Jason. Damn, no, I have to tell President Saha about this. Not to mention that the boy might be the JS master that the president has been looking for. Even the auction of the soul-rejuvenating potion should also be informed to President Saha, and it is very likely that the young man will come to participate in the auction at night. After thinking about this, Ronnie calmed down and walked towards the Talon City Spiritual Medicine Masters Union. After changing out of his cloak in the alley, Jason returned to the dormitory, soaked in the bodybuilding liquid and continued to practice. Having just reached the 7th level of spiritual power, he must seize every second to broaden the meridians in his body so that the meridians of levels 1 to 6 in his body can withstand the operation of 7th level spiritual power as soon as possible. After all, after widening the meridians, spiritual power cultivation is running in the meridians of the 1st to 7th levels in the body at the same time. The accumulation speed and cultivation speed of the spiritual power in the body are compared with ordinary people who only practice in the 7th level meridians. Just this, Jason's cultivation speed it is 7 times that of others. In addition, Jason forgets to sleep and eat in practice, and his own cultivation talent is also extremely high. Therefore, Jason can often complete the results of others' 10.5 months of practice in just one day. It might take an average person a year or 2 to reach the 8th level from spiritual power level 7, but Jason could probably reach it within a month or 2. Of course, Jason himself would not consider this in his mind. He just gritted his teeth and used the 7th level spiritual power to impact the meridians in his body over and over again. The severe pain made his whole body twitch, his face covered with sweat, and even you fainted from the pain. After waking up, he just remained silent, with red eyes, and began to rebuild his meridians again. These days, in the eyes of others, Jason, who used to be called a waste, has become famous, but they don't know that behind Jason's beauty, what is left is his endless sweat, which makes people almost collapse. Pain, and never-ending practice. How many people in this world can do this? Genius is 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration, not to mention Jason's hard training there. After Ronnie left, the middle-aged man looked through the information on the spirit-reviving potions again, and then he realized how precious the 3 bottles of spirit-reviving potions in front of him were. After notifying the top management of the auction house of the news, the top management of Oliver Auction House immediately made the decision and took out several more precious items from the auction house to join tonight's auction. Immediately afterwards, a gilded letter, the invitation was sent to the heads of various families in Talon City at the next moment. For a time, what was originally an ordinary auction held by Oliver Auction House every week suddenly became a major event in Talon City and entered the eyes of all parties in Talon City. The sky gradually darkened. After practicing in the bodybuilding spirit liquid for a while, Jason had something to eat in the school cafeteria. After calculating the time, he walked to the outside of Oliver Auction House. Looking at the bustling crowd outside the auction house and the large number of luxurious carriages parked outside the auction house, Jason, who had witnessed countless grand scenes in his previous life, could not help but secretly sigh in his heart. Things are flocking to each other. But just when Jason came to the auction house to sell tickets and was about to buy tickets, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Since Oliver Auction House announced in the afternoon that there would be several treasure-level items to be auctioned in the evening auction, he was immediately attracted by the news. Attracted the attention of everyone in Talon City. Some ordinary adventurers who do not have the ability to purchase have also purchased tickets for the auction hall. Even if they do not have the ability to purchase, it is still good to go in and experience it. After all, according to the introduction of Oliver Auction House, the scale of this auction is probably it's not much better than the annual large-scale auction held by Oliver Auction House. It's just because there is less time for publicity and the influence is a little less. Therefore, when Jason came to the place where tickets were sold, the no battle sign had been hung high at the ticket window of Oliver Auction House, informing that all tickets had been sold out, but there were still people gathering in front of the ticket window. There was a group of people who had not bought tickets, and there were even some scalpers, who were walking through the crowd with sly eyes, selling the extra tickets in their hands. Jason frowned and pinched the iron plate on his body. It seemed that he had to go to the private room arranged by the auction house. "Hey, Jason, why are you here too? Are you here to participate in the auction?" At this moment, a familiar voice suddenly came into Jason's ears from the side. Jason looked up and saw Xiao Bo was standing at the entrance of the auction house, looking at him in surprise. Yeah, such a coincidence? But looking at the dense crowd at the ticket window, Jason showed a helpless wry smile to Xiao Bo. Jason actually has a good impression of Xiao Bo. Not to mention that Xiao Bo helped him when he bought the Tianqin Emperor fruit and sold him a spiritual core of the fierce tiger beast king. More importantly, when Xiao Bo was fighting against Kate, he was one of the rare people who stood on his own side and cheered him up. Haha, it looks like you didn't buy a ticket. It doesn't matter. Come in with me. The one in my hand is a package ticket, but I'm the only one for the time being. If I add you, I won't be at such a loss. But this, you have to pay for the ticket. Xiao Bo said to Jason with a smile. Okay, I'll give it to you later, you guy, you have to calculate the money. I really made a bad friend by mistake, haha. Jason walked up, smiled and punched Xiao Bo, and the two of them laughed at the same time. Laughing loudly, he walked into the auction house. In the evening, the auction officially began. Jason and Xiao Bo came to their seats. The so-called package seats were located on the second floor of the auction hall. Usually 3 or 5 seats were connected together, allowing them to have an excellent view of the items on the auction table. The so-called private rooms on the Jason Iron sign are a circle of rooms built around the auction stage. Each room is staffed by dedicated personnel and provides a variety of free food, desserts and drinks for guests to enjoy. Sitting in his seat with Xiao Bo, Jason looked at the crowded crowd below and sighed slightly. There would be a status gap anywhere. An old man in blue robes came to the front desk of the auction hall, raised his hand and knocked the hammer in his hand. With a crisp sound, the entire auction hall fell silent instantly. Good evening, dear guests, I am William, the auctioneer of this auction house. I will preside over this auction. There are a total of 132 items in this auction. Considering that there are many items, the auction will start now. The auctioneer was also very straightforward and started the auction with simple politeness. The auctions at the beginning were all weapons made by various famous masters. Jason, who had seen countless treasures in his previous life, was not interested in these things that he could not use at the moment. Listening to the quotes around him, Jason smiled. It seems that there are many rich people. Although he had just arrived in this world not long ago and did not know much about the prices of many items in this era 3,000 years ago, he also knew that many items were sold for far more than the original price.